He's saying something so specific here that it's difficult to see it. Yeah.
I feel like he means like earning a living by people that feel like they'll never like amount to enough.
Yeah.
Like they'll never find a purpose for their life, so they surround themselves in that hobby or just to find a purpose.
So I get what you're saying, but explain for everyone. So you're saying that they will kind of, center themselves in some kind of a hobby out of a hopelessness for the future. Why would they do something like that?
To like feel like they like have done enough. I don't know. It just reminded me of this one musician. I forgot his name. I think his name is like Matt O'Grady. It's the movie Tick Tick Boom. It was about him. That he like surrounded his whole life around just getting his music out there, and that his music didn't even get out there until after he passed away, so that he didn't even get to see like the fulfillment of his life. But he surrounded himself in all of that he missed so much more.
There are a lot of people like that who become famous after they die, and they die believing that they're a complete abject failure. Wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to get a time machine and go back and grab that person and then bring them into the present so they can see what their life really genuinely amounted to? Did any of you guys watch Doctor Who TV show? Yeah. I've never seen it before, but I've seen a clip of it one time where it was, I believe, who was it? Was it Van Gogh? I think it was Van Gogh, I think it was. Vincent Van Gogh. And anyway, the premise of the show, you can tell me if I'm wrong, I believe is just there's a dude who's got a time machine, and he goes back and he does some cool stuff. That's as far as I know about the show, and I guess it's been on TV for like decades, and they always, every once in a while they come up with a new Doctor Who, so the show is just constantly running. So anyway, so there's one clip I saw, I didn't know the context, but you can kind of figure it out, where he apparently goes in the past and he meets Van Gogh, the painter, and he brings him back from back then into the present day. And Van Gogh died thinking he was a complete failure. He couldn't sell his paintings, he died poor, and all that. So he brings him into the present, and he takes Van Gogh to an exhibit, about Van Gogh. And he kind of walks him around the room. It's funny because he's dressed, in the show, the way he's dressed in one of his paintings. So if you kind of stand next to the painting, you'd be like, huh, it's a self-portrait. And while he's there, he positions Van Gogh somewhere, and then he goes around behind him and asks one of the curators, I think it is, or a professor, somebody who knows a lot about art, whatever the guy's role is. And they had met before, I guess. So he says, "Oh yes, how have you been?" So he asked him, "Oh, so you're here at the Van Gogh exhibit?" And he asks him, "Where in like the pantheon of art history would you place Van Gogh?" And he says, "That's a big question." And he talks about his style and his color and his use of a theme, and he goes, "I would probably place him as the greatest who ever lived." So imagine being Van Gogh and being able to hear that, afterwards. Like you died thinking you were a complete failure. But at the time, if you could have just, hung on for a little bit longer and known what all of your art was going to amount to and what it would become, And a lot of us are like that. Like you're going to live a life and you're going to do some things and you're going to believe that you have failed in a lot of areas. But it's like, God, it would be amazing if you could just see like what the resounding trickle of your influence in the world is and what kind of a river it can become. Like in other words, maybe in your whole life you never really influenced very many people, but you influenced one person, and then that one person who was influenced by you goes off and does something incredible. You never even realized you had it. Maybe you met them on the trolley at one time, and you talked to them at a time when they just needed someone to talk to, and you heard something that they needed to say. And just by you being there, you did that. And the funny thing is that you do change every single person's life that you interact with every day. And I don't just mean this in some like hippy-dippy way of, we all have influence on each other, we leave our spirits and souls with everyone. I really mean it like, by virtue of the fact that you walk down the hallway, if there's someone walking towards you, and then they move to the side to go around you, and then you move to get in front of them, you guys kind of do that stutter step, and then you kind of, you go around them, that person's day is now delayed by 2 seconds. And that means that wherever they would have been 10 seconds from now, they're not going to be there because you've interacted with them and you slowed them down in the world. You know, like really weird things like that. You know, and when you're driving, the same idea. And you don't even know, maybe even the fact that you cut somebody off in traffic and they slammed on the brakes and they get so pissed off at you, they honk at you. Maybe even you make them so angry that they follow you for a couple of blocks. And then maybe by virtue of the fact they followed you for a couple of blocks, they avoided a car accident 3 blocks that way where they would have been killed. You know, wouldn't it be amazing if you could go back and look at all the possible permutations of your life and the influence that it had? But there's something almost unsatisfactory about that, though, because we're thinking about the influence that we have on others. Understand that others are having that same kind of an influence on you, and that you're having that same influence on yourself. And it'd be amazing to be able to see after you die what it is that you kind of left behind and where the world was because of you. You know? It's one of the reasons, you guys have seen that show, many of you, I'm sure, 13 Reasons Why. That's one of the things that's so terrible about that show. It's that, for those of you, if you know, you know, but it's about a high school girl who commits suicide, and she leaves these 13 tapes behind to explain why she did it. And she, you know, who she blames and what happened and all that. But the reason I think this show is so horrible is because it gives you the sense that you get to stick around and see what happens, which isn't the case. When you commit suicide, you don't get to see the impact and influence that it has. You know, you don't get to feel the hole that you leave behind, and you shouldn't underestimate the hole that you would leave behind in a lot of ways. But in that show, the girl who does it, she's always showing up, like in ghost form, whenever, you know, gets to see what happens and gets to, and even as the audience, we get to see what happens. And it's almost alluring in that kind of a way if you're just like angry with the world, or you're angry with people, or you're hurt, and you want to kind of matter in some way. But unfortunately, in that kind of a way, you never get to see it, of course. And I promise you, there's no positive way that plays out, where you remember in a positive way. You know, all that you leave is, you know, pain, regret, guilt, all these kinds of things. And if that's the kind of thing that you're aspiring to leave behind in the world, I would implore you not to, because there are far better things that you can leave behind than all of those. And so it's interesting to look back and kind of maybe hope to see the kind of influence that we can have. And maybe that's the kind of thing for a person who feels entirely hopeless. Maybe that's why you don't have, maybe that's one of the reasons that you find a lot of poor people who become musicians. Maybe it's that big Hail Mary pass, like I have nothing else going, I have nothing else in life. This is the thing perhaps that can get me out of there, like Kayleen was saying. So maybe there's a sense there where a person feels that they just can't earn a living. And because they can't do that, they go for the big Hail Mary. And unfortunately, a lot of us will look at that and go, that's what I'm going to do. You know, but it really is that 1 in 100 million chance of panning out, if you even have the ability to do it. You know? It's like we say, YOLO, right? You only live once. But that's the problem, you only live once. Do you really want to risk it all on a massive gamble like this? What Marcuse is saying here is those who devote their lives to earning a living, if you have to devote your life to earning a living, in other words, if you're having to struggle with the day-to-day earning and trudging away and all of that, then he says, you're incapable of living a human existence. So of course we have to kind of figure out what he means by a human existence. You know, what it is to have a truly human existence. But we can gather a lot from Marcuse just by this one comment here. He believes that if you have to work, so how about this? What does he think about work generally? What's his attitude towards work? Earning a living?
It's wasting time.
Yeah, and what kind of time specifically? Maybe it's a bad way of asking the question, but
Personal time.
Personal time? And what would we call our personal time?
Human
Existence, yeah, our lifetime. You know, we have this weird way of thinking about time, like, you know, it's your downtime, it's your free time, it's your off time. No, it's all under one category, which is your lifetime. You know, and that's really how short it is, right? It's your shortest finger, I guess. It's all lifetime. And we kind of delineate it, we separate it out like this, as though we have these different periods of life that are that are allotted to us, but it really is just one big thing. And how it is that we delineate that is entirely on us. And do we make it work time, or do we make it lifetime, or do we make it free time, or downtime, or spare time, or whatever we want to call it, work time? But yeah, he has a very negative impression towards work generally. He thinks that work, or the focus on having to earn a living, deprives us of human existence, human experience. So now you can start to gather some things about him politically and what he thinks. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. You can gather some things about what he thinks politically. And you'd probably be right about it. He has a very negative impression towards work. He thinks that if you have to earn a living, then you don't get to do those things that really encapsulate human existence. What are some of those things? What might some of those things be? And when he talks about human existence, living a human existence, what does it mean to live a human existence? What are the things that make us human? Joy?
Bonds with others.
Bonds with others?
Sadness.
Sadness?
Our own personal beliefs, maybe.
Well, so that's what we're getting at right now. Because I asked that kind of a question. It's a Rorschach test. There's nothing in the question at all that tells me that tells you what it means. When you're thinking right now about what makes a worthy human existence, whatever you're saying right now, if what you're saying is authentic, that's telling me, it's also telling you what that is to you. You know, for example, like if there's something in you where, bonds with other people, yeah. And this is really fascinating. I have this study on my computer. 2 years old now, I think it is, maybe 3. But essentially they're looking at the top regrets that old people have. So people who are nearing the winter of their lives, what's the most common regrets that people have? You know what the number one most common regret that people have is?
No.
Oh. It's it. What's that?
Not spending time with people.
Close. Very close. Not having a closer relationship with their children.
Oh, the children.
Yeah, specifically. Not having a closer relationship with their children. And that's funny. Because as you guys walk through life and you think like, man, I'm told where to go, when to be there, I have all these rules, you realize that you have incredible power within you right now to determine whether your parents have a life of regret or not. Think about that. If at some point, if you just kind of like, your parents like, oh, I love you, and you're like, whatever, man. Or your parents get mad at you because of something that you did, or at least you can see why they would think that you did it. And you can stay mad at them for a while, but all that's doing is chipping away at the time of life that you have together. It's kind of like if you have like a significant other, and you guys are arguing about something that, and maybe at the time, of course, it seems important because it's not really about the thing, it's about the ego, let's say. So we're going to put our foot down, we're going to fight over this, and again, maybe it's about something completely different. But do you realize that the time that you're spending fighting and not talking is time that you're never going to get back? That's time that you're going to sit there at the end of your life and say, man, I wish I had those times back. And imagine if we took that same time machine that we were talking about earlier, and we can recalibrate it. And rather than show you the impact that your life has on people around you, the world around you, instead we could tally up all of that time that we wasted fighting over stupid shit, man. And you had to face the fact about what you were fighting over. So you guys didn't talk for 6 months because you said that Five Guys was better than In-N-Out?
Well, that's not. In-N-Out's way better.
Well, it's not. You're wrong about that. But it's okay. You're still growing. And he won't talk to me for 2 years. And then and he's going to go, really? Imagine you sit there and go like, well, I mean, yeah, we fought over that. And your shoulders come up because you get really nervous. And then, some of the afterlife is like, over a cheeseburger. And by the way, if you... I was thinking that's what your stupid argument was about. And then say, now by the way, because you fought for 6 months over the cheeseburger, okay, I get it. No, you don't. Let me make it clearer for you. Here are all of the things that you missed out on with that person because you fought over something silly. And it's not that a cheeseburger is of course a silly example, but there are lots of things that they can seem important to us. But in retrospect, if you really measure it against this grand scheme of things, do you really want to miss 6 months of a relationship with somebody, or a year relationship with somebody, or even 2 hours of a relationship with somebody, because of something silly, you know? Especially if we can look at it and go, yeah, it's kind of my fault. Or even if it's not my fault, maybe just fix it, you know, apologize. And you don't have to lie and grovel and all that stuff, but you know, these human relationships, these human what you said? Yeah, these human bonds. Good teacher. These human bonds, I mean, they're worth maybe fixing, because if that is the thing that leads us to a truly human existence, you know, then maybe that's the thing that we should work on fixing first and foremost. Maybe that's what it is to earn a living. It isn't to earn a living maybe in the sense of to go out and make money. Maybe it's to earn your life, to earn the life that you would want it to be. You know? Well, like I'm saying, right now you guys all have that power, whether you realize it or not, to influence whether your parents live lives of regret. And I get it, man. Some parents are horrible. I get it. Some students are horrible too. You know, some police officers are horrible, and some pizza delivery drivers are horrible, because some people are horrible. And we just have to kind of figure out if we want to fix those bonds. And unfortunately, especially, man, you might find that you are the adult in a relationship with some parents. You know what I mean? You know what I mean by this? Some of our parents just haven't grown up, and I do from time to time meet that person who's the adult in that relationship. You know? And maybe we owe it to them to a certain degree to save them from a life of regret by having that relationship with them, that on their deathbed they might look back on and say, God, I wish I had a better relationship with you. I wish I'd spend more time with you. Because that's how you can tell what's valuable, what you put your time into. Because if you value your lives, and I imagine that we all do to an extent, even if you're going through some heavy shit right now, all of us value our lives to an extent, which is why we're still here. And if you value your life, then you should value your time, because that's what your life is made of. And if you value your life and you value your time, then where do you put your time? Do you put it into the human existence things, these things that really make your life better? I guess first you have to figure out what they are. And maybe it's the human bonds. No, I can't think of that word, human bonds. Maybe it's towards earning a living, working 60, 70 hours to earn a living, to provide better for your family. Because maybe the thing that you're trying to provide better for your family is a better example than what your father provided for you, or what your mother provided for you. Maybe you want to provide an ethic to go out there, and so that maybe what you want is really for your children to say, wow, my mom or dad does X, Y, and Z, they earn a bunch of money. And whenever I finally get to see them, they buy me shit. And then because we don't have the time, or we put the time elsewhere, we'll jam stuff into those pockets of time that are empty. And maybe it's about wanting to be a better example to people, to your children, or maybe if we're honest with ourselves, it's about wanting to prove to ourselves that we're better than somebody else. And the world used to look down on me, but not today, because today I'm the world's richest man. You ever seen Elon Musk back when he started? He started PayPal. That's how he earned his. I think that's how he got wealthy, if I'm not mistaken. You ever see pictures of him when he's at PayPal? He's all balding, he's dumpy, he's like, and then he makes a bunch of money, and he gets hair implants, and he hires a personal chef and a trainer, and now he walks around like Elon Musk. So when people say like money doesn't matter, oh yeah, it does. It sure helps. It helped him. But you gather though for Elon Musk, it isn't about the money at this point, because, by the way, did you guys see that he launched a hostile takeover of Twitter? Now, he didn't join the board, because if he joined the board, he wouldn't be able to do it, but as of this morning, he's trying to take over Twitter. He'll essentially buy Twitter, force a sale into his hands. So he's putting a bunch of money into it, which is funny. It's interesting. But anyway, you look at that guy, it's clearly not about the money. It's about being able to leave a mark behind, to leave something important of yourself. At least in his mind, what's important. I will say this, and I'll leave you with this. It's worth considering. when you go back and you look at the Fortune 500 companies, and every year Forbes publishes the top 500 wealthiest, highest revenue companies in the world. Since they've been publishing this list, if I'm not mistaken, as I understand it, of the top 100 that are on there, might be the 500, but certainly the top 100 that are on there, there are only 3 companies that are on there right now that were there when they first published the list. Which means companies do this, shh, and another company does that, shh. And we have this tendency to look at many of these massive companies and say, they're too big, man. No one can take them over. You know, you guys remember MySpace? You. MySpace was huge until all of a sudden Facebook comes along, and then people are like, oh, man, MySpace is too big. There's no way you can compete with them. And then Facebook shows up. Oh, man, Facebook is too big. Can't compete with them. And then Twitter shows up. And then Instagram shows up, which, you know, they're different, but the same concept as social media. You know, of all those companies that were the wealthiest companies in the world, there are only a few that still exist, because that's what happens. So maybe that's worth considering about the prospects of wealth and long-term kind of, you know, remembrances of it. No matter how big your company is that you leave behind, someday it's going to fail. It's going to be gone, just like you. And it will be forgotten as well. So maybe that's not where we want to put our things into, our energies into. I don't know. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?
Could you do both, like be earning a living and experiencing a human existence?
Yeah, it seems like it. It's not for very long.
Not for long.
Yeah, it is possible. What happens is a lot of times people get up into, you know what, I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to earn all my money right now, and then I'm going to retire. Good luck. No one does that. Very few people, I shouldn't say no one does. Very, 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 very few people do that. I mean, if you earn $1 billion by the time you're 23, how do you suppose you did that?
Working.
Yeah, working. Because you had a goal, you had a purpose, you had a meaning. You oriented your entire life towards that one thing. And all of a sudden you get it, and you're like, Scarface in the restaurant. Is this it? This is what it's all about, right? Because there's always something else out there, because you're the personality type that probably wants to conquer. You're probably the personality type that wants to achieve and to drive forward. And you don't just turn off that switch. You know, you ever see, like, I could talk about Aaron Hernandez. Remember Aaron Hernandez, the football player? People will look at that guy and be like, my God, how did that guy, why did he do what he did? Like, he was incredibly successful, he was wealthy, he was famous, he had all of these things kind of going for him. How did he become all those things? Because he's nuts. That's how. He was a dude who was born, he was very big, he had a work ethic, he was everything going for him, and his job in professional football, he was a tight end. So when the ball was hiked, his job was to run a pattern in the middle of a field and then catch a ball, surrounded by people from the other team whose whole job is to injure you and put you out of a career.
Yep.
That's their job. And so when that ball gets thrown and it's just above your head, a rational person, they put their hands up to catch the ball, and then they hear, forget that, man. But instead, Aaron Hernandez, his job was to catch that ball, tuck it in, and take the biggest hits in the game. You got to be a little off in order for that to happen. You've got to be something different from most people. And you can't, and that's not a switch that you just go, that's just who you are. You're that person. And so the person who can earn $1 billion by the time they're 23, that's not a switch that you turn on and off. That's a personality type. And then once you get it, like I said, you're looking around like, so I just sit around the beach all day? How long can you enjoy doing that? Well, you guys tell me, how long, when you were on vacation, how long were you on vacation for? 2 weeks? And how much did you enjoy all 2 weeks of it, every day of those 2 weeks? I wonder how long some of you sat there and were like, well, this sucks. Groundhog Day. It's the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again. And you might think like, man, if I had $1 billion, it wouldn't be like this. Yeah, it would. Because flying to Paris would just be like, oh, it's Groundhog Day. Today's boring. I'm going to go to Paris. And you jump on a plane, you go to Paris. And then when you're in Paris, you're hanging out, and now you're bored in Paris after a while. And then you're like, I don't know, man. Well, I'll go to Milan. I'll try that. And you go there, and you're there for a while. And I can speak to this because very wealthy people don't live like that. You know, they get that way because of this work ethic, this motor, this drive. And that's something that they are. You can't just turn that thing on and off. This is why wealth is generational, meaning that you typically have people who earn the money, and they typically earn it from not having much. And then their children who were raised in that environment by that person who really had the motivation and the drive, their children see that, and so they kind of inherit some of that. But they still have had an easier life, so they don't have maybe the same tenacity that their parents had. And then by the time you get to the third generation, the grandchildren, they're born into it. They have no idea what it takes to earn a dollar. Even if they kind of see it, it's different from experiencing it. And so typically that's how generational wealth works. People earn it, their children can improve upon it, and then typically the grandchildren are the ones who lose it. It's usually 3 generations in the US. That's why you have these Fortune 500, and by the way, companies work the same way. That's why you have these Fortune 500 companies, only 3 of which are still on that same list, because they went through that cycle. We tend to focus on the 3 who are still on the list. Oh, but what about them? See, it's just because they're rich. No, I mean, fine, yes, whatever. What about the other 497? There's a lot of room in there for you, if you want that. But I would suspect that most of us don't want that. Most of us want to wake up every day, go to work if we have to, complain about it, drive home, and maybe have a family that cares about us and that we can feel good about having provided for. Not so much that they're going to be brats and unappreciative. Not like us, right? Not like us. So maybe not so much that they're spoiled, but not so little that they struggle the way that we did. But you see the irony in that. You can earn the living because you struggled. It's that thing that you have when we say that thing of, I want better for my children. What that typically becomes is, I don't want them to struggle the way I struggled. Because I struggled, and I came up with all of these difficulties. Yeah, but isn't that the thing that gave you the ability to overcome and to achieve? And isn't that why you're able to provide for your family? Aren't you maybe taking that away from your children by not letting them struggle? I don't know. I don't have any children. I imagine, what's that?
Do you want some children or not?
I would be a terrible father. Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
I'm not going to disagree on my major.
Hey, seriously, but any of you guys want to be raised by someone like me? You know, I got my PhD.
Cool.
Why not a PHA? That would be terrible. Well, if you came to me and you were like 4 and you're like, I want some breakfast. I go, well, there's fruit somewhere around here. And you have a bag of Skittles. I'd be like, yeah, there's fruit in Skittles. Skittles is a good breakfast. And you'd find me sitting there with a 4-year-old eating Skittles for breakfast. I'd be terrible at it. But I imagine that for parents, it's very difficult when you see your children to say, no, I'm not going to give you this. I want you to struggle. You know, but why? We have it. We don't have shit. I have. You know, and it really is funny. Like I saw a meme around Christmas, which is something effective when my kids ask me what I'm getting them for Christmas. It's like a bunch of pictures of like bows. I go Christmas bows on like the heater, bows on all the food in the refrigerator, bows on their bed, and we look at that and we're like, but you're supposed to do that. Yeah, that is the deal you make, but I don't know that buying you a car is somewhere in there. Maybe it's good to struggle and buy your first car, and it's going to be a piece of shit. And then when you have that piece of shit, who cares? It's your piece of shit. And you're going to have like a car that costs you like $900, and you're going to put $2,000 rims on it. You're going to sit there and you remember this joke when you're putting gas in your car. How do I double the value of this car? I fill up the tank. And you'll understand that at some point if you drive a piece of crap. But it's your piece of crap. And that car's going to break down and everything, and you're going to be thinking, man, if I just had more time, I could do this. I don't know, what did you do during break when you had 2 weeks of time? I hope so. I was just talking to a friend of mine yesterday. He's a musician. And he stopped going to the gym and doing a bunch of stuff, and he told me it's because I want to focus on music. He's actually pretty good. And he wants to go up to LA to study at this music academy up there. And he is pretty good, actually. I like it. I actually do like his stuff. I was talking to him yesterday, and he was saying, man, I don't have the time anymore, man. He said he struggled financially, so he has 2 jobs now. And I talked to him about recording some stuff, and he said, yeah, we'll find the time. He's like, but just, I find myself overwhelmed right now. And I asked him, just out of curiosity, during those 3 months, 4 months or so that you had all that time, how much did you write? And he said he came up with 1.5 songs, basically during that time period. And I asked him, since you've been working 2 jobs, what do you have? And he laughed, and he just goes, yeah, I guess that's true. I've got 3 songs. Because the time that he does have, he really values it. And he puts his time and energy into that. He's like, I've only got this time, I have to go to work. And the whole time he says he's going to work, he's pissed off. Like, man, I wish I could just finish this. But I can't. I have to go to work. I have to go earn a living. But the whole time he's at work, he's thinking about that track. And then when he goes back home, he's got ideas that he never would have had otherwise. Because he would have been working on it. He would have had time to marinate in it. So, it's funny. Time. Others? Yeah.
What do you suggest we, parents do then with, or would you think you would know?
Well, what the hell do I know? I just told you I eat Skittles for breakfast.